Hello and welcome to another episode of the SEO Unplugged podcast. I'm your host, Itamar Blauer. Today I'm joined with Steve Paine, who's the marketing manager at SISTRIX. Steve, how are you?
Hello there, and thanks for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Great to have you here. So, what a interesting episode that we've got today, because I think it's something that, in theory, is quite broad. But of course, what we want to do is really dive deep into more contemporary practices and how we can, well, how marketers should be approaching competitor analysis, because that's the topic of today. So much to really talk about. But maybe the first thing we can discuss is what you think is happening right here and now that may be different in terms of more traditional ways that marketers or SEOs have approached competitor analysis and what we should really be looking out for now.
Right. Well, you say traditional. I mean, digital marketing is what, 20 years old at this point? There's old, and there's traditional, and there's recent, and there's things that are happening today. So, of course, the first big change that happened last year is probably, well, 2 years ago now, I believe. It was GPT starting to look at these LLMs. Then Google bringing that AIO element into the SERP to replace mostly the featured snippets. Interesting data coming out around that, and then of course looking at those apps as well and how competitors and how brands, products, entities appear in those apps. And how they sit alongside other entities as well. So huge changes. I think most of your listeners will be pretty aware of most of the changes that are going on, but I think it's very useful to have multiple discussions about this. And I've been listening to a lot of people recently. There's some great ideas, and people should be listening to multiple sources of information to try and, distill down exactly what's happening in this market right now.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think, when you think of competitor analysis from the lens of an SEO, you would think that like the first thing that comes to most people's minds is, okay, well, who's ranking on Google and what is it that we need to do in terms of looking at our content and how we can sort of position ourselves more competitively within that. That would be what I would say is sort of top of mind for most people and how it's always been with SEO. But then there are things, as you sort of mentioned, and the sort of AI platforms, Google's AI overviews, and all of that we'll dive into in a little bit as well. But I think that something that's worth talking about really is how I think the needs need to change in terms of the things that people are looking for specifically. So beforehand, it was like, okay, we've got a keyword, we're going to put it in, and we're going to compare those results, and we want to be shown for that. But now what we're sort of seeing is intents are changing, or there's various different types of ways people search around a particular intent. So you're kind of focusing less on an individual keyword and more around the sort of overarching types of search terms and the semantics around a search to be visible for. So that would be one part. But I think something else that is quite interesting to talk about, where obviously, Systrix is able to provide lots of cool data, is around particular page level type of analysis where I think historically a lot of people would look into competitor analysis and say, okay, well, how much traffic does this website have versus mine? But actually, there could be a whole myriad of topics that they talk about that might not be even relevant. So it's like, why do you want to compare the overall figures? So what's your take on those sort of two things around the comparing based on intent and maybe more on a page level or a topic level as opposed to just general domain types of metrics that a lot of tools sort of give out.
Okay, right. Well, you're exactly right. Getting that intent right is absolutely number one. If you choose a bunch of keywords and they have multiple different intents, and then you start to search for the winners for that set of keywords, you're going to find winners that may not actually be targeted correctly. So you're absolutely right. Get the intent right. So you may choose. So a good one is groceries, right? The word groceries is not often used actually in search unless it's an informational type of search. You'll find Wikipedia and some other definitions coming up. And then we've got like online groceries. Well, that's another intent. We've also got grocery delivery, which is different to online groceries, where online groceries can be pick up as well. Delivery is often that sort of 20-minute delivery type thing. So you see different competitors for those, and we've done this for those three terms, a completely different competitor landscape. So number one is to make sure you craft your keyword set or even a single keyword very carefully. You can use Google data to find out the keyword environment around that, because basically if you take one keyword and you've got that correct, you look at the top 10 SERPs and you find out the keywords for which all those top 10 URLs rank, you're going to have a really nice related keyword environment. And from that, you can extrapolate very easily the top domains, the top directories, and even the top URLs. And once you've got that crafting done correctly, with a little bit of curation to take out, obviously things like boots, you've got to consider the chemist and the fashion wear. Start crafting carefully. Start curating carefully, and then you'll end up with blueprints for success. You'll find the top URLs. You can go in there, you can look at their brand voice, the content, the types of media that's in there, the way they're writing, the authors that are involved as well in some topics. Obviously, the author is very important. So, yep, get that keyword crafted and the intent set correctly before you start to look at competitors. And don't, by the way, try and take a list of domains off the top of your head, because you will forget Reddit, you will forget Amazon, and you'll forget some rising stars that are always there. Every time we do Sector Watch, which is effectively looking at competitors within a sector, we find rising stars that we never really knew about. And if you can monitor that from day one, you'll find new rising stars and new rising stars. And these are the ones you need to keep an eye on, because they'll creep up and overtake you without you even realizing.
No, it's a very good point. I think that sort of way of thinking is where things need to change in terms of the defaults. I think defaults of competitor analysis really has to be understanding the topic first and foremost, like you're sort of mentioning, because you gave the example of groceries, right? But when you understand the topic, you understand how groceries work, you will know that there's different types. There's the ones like you mentioned, where you go online and you can do click and collect. There's ones that are specifically for deliveries. But if you sort of just take grocery as the overarching topic and you sort of bundle everything into that, and you look at domains that could cover all of these different areas, whereas maybe the website you're trying to optimize for is solely delivery focused. So there might be a lot of other things that you may find in your competitor analysis that if you didn't have that prior context and really focus in on what's relevant, you may end up with a lot of things that may sort of cloud your judgment in terms of how best to approach to be competitive for terms that are actually going to be driving those conversions. Because if you don't, then probably a waste of your time, right?
Absolutely. A good point you made there about sort of existing websites. One of the mistakes that is made is assuming that what your site ranks for is what you should be trying to achieve. No, it's that old thing to skating where the hockey puck is going to be. You've got to point yourself in the right direction. If Google has you pointed in another direction, you can't build on that to have success. You need to change slightly your strategy. It's a very difficult thing to do, to take an established website and to change the direction like a big ocean liner. It takes a lot of effort, a lot of time, and a lot of money, obviously, to do that. But make sure you understand with blindfold on. Don't look at any data to start with. Where's our direction? What are our core keywords and intents? And then from there, you can start to build that competitor list and find the blueprints for success and really understand how you're going to build your content.
Absolutely. And then if we want to now shift towards what's happening now on the SERPs and with search in general. So there's sort of two big aspects to this. The first one is from Google's perspective, the behemoth that is Google search, introducing AI capabilities within the SERP directly. That's going to be one part. The other part is looking into the up and coming LLMs. So ChatGPT search, for example. So I guess with those two in mind, how do you envision competitor analysis being done, especially when it comes to data that marketers kind of need in order to conduct these types of research and analyses?
So, of course, Google is always one of your competitors. Even pre-AIO days, there was Google in there for flights, for shopping, for all sorts of other things. So we mustn't forget that. In terms of the AIO box, what we know so far is that it's fairly stable right now in the US and the UK. We haven't seen the EU data building just yet, but it's fairly stable in terms of its format. I know there are a lot of tests going on. We've seen recent tests regarding shopping elements that are coming into there and the way that links are changing within there, but it's fairly stable. So what's happening right now is that it's targeting informative searches. We're seeing it certainly, we saw it very early in the area of health and your money, your life type stuff, which is kind of interesting, right? Because Google spent a lot of time telling us to get that content in order. In the meantime, it's probably learned a lot from that content, and now it's feeling confident enough to actually put answers forward for that type of content. So if we look at Healthline, good example, a large percentage of the keywords for which they rank, which is informative content, has an AIO element, and that will be changing the CTR curve for that SERP, of course, and in most cases negatively, because rather than that single box at the top or position one, we have a search within a search almost. We have an algorithm within an algorithm, just like top stories always was. That's an algorithm within an algorithm, and we have to start learning about this algorithm. And well, I can tease today that we've got some data and tools coming out maybe next week that will. Oh, by the way, it's May 2025 now, early May 2025, for those watching on the replay, that will come out and we'll start to learn about visibility for certain brands and entities. And this is the way to do it. We've got to start reverse engineering that AIO, and it will take us a long time. It will take a lot of people's time to do it, but I'm sure that within 12 months, there's going to be some really nice ideas and a nice playbook coming out, as long as we follow the right people on LinkedIn or wherever we're following our SEOs. We're going to have a nice playbook, I think, within 12 months about how to deal with this new algorithm within an algorithm.
Sure, yeah, and of course, I think one of the challenges that we're sort of faced with at the moment is from tools, proprietary Google tools like Google Search Console, where there's been discussions and people have asked representatives at Google about how are we going to be able, when are we going to see more visibility across this stuff? And from what I understood, and correct me if I'm wrong, it didn't really seem like it was really in the works of them sort of high on their priority list to sort of give the marketers some more data clarity and visibility on these areas. So of course, if that's out the question, then of course using third-party tools is going to have to be the next best available thing to at least get some kind of visibility on that. So that's where I'm sort of curious to see what SISTRIX can do on that front. So obviously we don't need to tease anything now if we can't. But I guess the other part of this element is the LLMs, the AI platforms, ChatGPT, search. What do you reckon in terms of competitor analysis when you're sort of looking into how, if we're saying that ChatGPT search has 1% of the searches that Google has. So with that said, that's a lot of searches. There's a lot of things that people want to sort of understand how they're doing. How are we doing versus our competitors? So what's your take on that?
Let's quickly step back to that Search Console question. I'm pretty sure at some point we're going to get data from Google, but like Search Console data, it comes with caveats. The primary job of Google is to sell ads, and I'm pretty sure that the data is available. Well, it will be available somewhere. It's a matter of them now trying to work out how to present that data in such a way that it helps their business and potentially helps SEOs. So SISTRIX, we've always been about trying to make that data transparent for everyone across all domains. And so that's what we'll do with our new AI chat tool. We're looking at 3 of the most common LLMs right now, OpenAI's ChatGPT, Perplexity, and Gemini. We're already seeing interesting differences between the 3 and the types of data that comes out. There's one of those. I won't give you too much data today, but one of those is very good on giving links and sources. One of those is very bad on giving links and sources. And then to come to your second question, there is, how quickly will those tools ramp up and take share from Google? Well, there's kind of three scenarios. Either nothing will happen. Well, that's probably not the case. I think we're pretty confident that something's going to happen. It's either going to, it's going to happen overnight, or it's going to happen slowly. And Google, with Gemini and with AI, will start to craft and re-engineer stuff to match what customers want. And we'll be following that. Our new tool will give you data on what's going on in terms of entities. Remember also that we've got this small change from country now to language. So Spanish and English specifically are going to cover multiple countries. So I'm looking at the English data. There's a lot of dollar signs in there for if you search for UK data or data out of the UK. So we've got to remember that we're talking about language and not location anymore in terms of search results. But the important thing is to try and work out the rate of increase of usage of these tools. We're at the starting point now. You mentioned 1-2%. I think that's the number I have in my head as well. But if we come back in 2 months' time and say 3%, that's a massive increase in 2 months. And then we need to work that one out over a period of time and start to work out the rate of change. And if it's very high, then we need to be careful to make sure we've got the right data and we start building that into our search marketing processes.
Sure. Yeah, and I guess this is one of those things that's really exciting, but also there's a lot of still things up in the air because we don't know exactly how the adoption is going to look like. We don't know exactly what these tools are going to look like, even less like next year, but let alone in the next few years or even in a few months because things change so quickly. So I guess with that in mind, when it comes to businesses and websites who are trying to work out how to be competitive and they're trying to seek out who's visible across these different mediums and the competitor analysis kind of framework moving forward in the future, how do you envision, well, first of all, do you envision it changing even more? And if so, how do you think businesses should be approaching this for the future, for the long term, so that they're sort of continuously kept up to date, even with these developments in terms of how they can get ahead of their competitors?
Yeah. Well, I'm pretty sure that everyone's confident that it's going to change over time. If you look back to social media networks and the changes that happened over time, even when there were established players, TikTok's the great example, that changed everything in the last 5 years. So yes, things are going to change. There's going to be new players. There's a lot of money involved here. Maybe one takes over another. Maybe there are investments from governments, for example, the EU, that puts EU-focused tools forward. I don't know, but we can expect changes. And in terms of how to keep an eye on this, well, there is no single source of information here. You're going to get marketing information from every tool provider, and that is going to be marketing information and not real information. For example, we have increased our percentage usage by 3,500%. Yeah, okay, from what level? So we're going to get strange figures, but the most important thing I think to do is to talk about it. I think this year is going to be a year in which SEOs and digital marketing managers, product managers, brand managers need to be involved at events to talk, discuss, distill information, and to throw away the obvious rubbish that's going to come out as well. You can spend all day looking at LinkedIn, but I think the most efficient way to spend your time is to choose and go to a high-level event, to listen to speakers and to discuss with attendees what's happening in their industries, how they're coping with it. This is the way to do it. Obviously, there's going to be tools like ours. We're not the only tool provider out there, but we'll work hard to try and provide you a nice, transparent look at least those three tools to start with, in terms of entity visibility across the board.
Amazing. And I guess then that kind of wraps it up nicely in the sense that for people who are out there who want to explore a bit more with SISTRIX, or at least talking about or identifying what SISTRIX can do from a competitive analysis perspective moving forward, how could people reach out to you, Steve, if they want to ask any questions?
Well, I would advise having a look at Sector Watch. So type Systrix Sector Watch into your browser, and you're going to end up with about 30 different reports that we've done, which go deep into competitor analysis and different intents. Charlie Williams, an external experienced expert SEO, does those for us. They are very good ways to look and think about competitors. There's also a newsletter you can sign up to there as well. Otherwise, I'm always available on LinkedIn, and I'm speaking at Hive MCI in Manchester next week. I'll be down, and again, for those watching on playback, that's second week of May 2025. On the Friday, the Recommerce event, I'll be there as well. And a Brighton SEO in October as well. I'll be there, and we'll be bringing data to stage there as well.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much, Steve, for joining me today. It was a really interesting conversation, and I'm sure there's a lot of things to take away from there as well. And as always, thank you to everyone listening out there as well. And we will see you, as always, in the next episode. Hey, you've reached the end of this video, but don't worry, there's plenty more great content that you can watch right now. All you have to do is click one of the 2 video links on the left side of the screen. And also, if you haven't already, make sure to subscribe and turn on the notification bell to never miss out on future uploads.